I'd like to get into the allegations of rigging that happened in the Green Party nomination process. So just a week ago, they declared Howie Hawkins the presumptive nominee. What I found very weird was that he was the only person on the ballot in like half of the states. Could you please explain that to us? How does that even happen?
Okay, so background is necessary on this because this has been something our campaign has been talking about for about a year and a half. You know, I gave a fiery speech at the annual national meeting of the Green Party last summer, in which I called out the conflicts of interest, the special promo being given to the Hawkins campaign by state parties, by the National Party. When the race began, National Party was profiling Hawkins on its website more so than other candidates, and there were already several back then. State parties were giving special fundraising events, promo opportunities, speaking opportunities exclusively to Hawkins. And then when our campaign asked, hey, can we get the equal opportunity to do that, to speak to your members? Their response was always, well, no, we're not having any candidates speak, but you just gave a special event for Hawkins. He's not really coming to speak as a candidate. He's just coming to speak about the Green New Deal. And that was the excuse that they gave time and time again. This was several state parties. And so one of the things that I had to do was to start to just basically barnstorm these events. I would just show up and speak off the agenda. I would call people during lunch to come and hear me. I was definitely not going to just go away. And that's why our campaign did have the measure of success that it had, most notably in Missouri, where there was a Green Party panel, Green New Deal panel. And Hawkins was put as a member of that panel. And even though I was physically there, I was told that I and no other candidate could be there. Well, I got up, I took a chair, I sat down. And that was the end of it. And this was the kind of pushing that we had to do consistently throughout the campaign. Now, you talk about appearance on ballots. It varied from state to state. Some states, only some of the several candidates were allowed. The most glaring instance was North Carolina. Only one candidate was put on the ballot in North Carolina, and that was Howie Hawkins. They set special requirements for ballot access that were five times the fundraising of the requirements for national recognition by the party. Now, for those who don't know, there's a national recognition process for candidates to be nationally recognized by the party. I think that's bogus as well. It's another opportunity for them to try to selectively screen out candidates so they can narrow it down to their chosen few in what is a sham primary. But NC exceeded even that. And they knew at the time when they put that rule in place that the only candidate that was meeting that fundraising benchmark was Hawkins. It was strategically organized to ensure that he would be the only person on the ballot. And I have to add to that the state party leaders that were in charge of that decision making, they were publicly avowed members of the Hawkins team. They were on his website with smiling pictures as supporters for Hawkins while they were making decisions that were supposed to be impartial in regards to candidates put on the ballot. And so we had the embarrassing situation of the Greens putting forward only one name in North Carolina, while the Libertarians, for example, put forward 16. And we're supposed to be the party that talks about open ballot access, about democracy, open the debates. It's incredibly hypocritical. And you saw different versions of this happen all across the country, with some candidates being sifted out and others being allowed on. And I have to say that our campaign did not have it as bad as others, in part because, you know, we made sure we couldn't be ignored, and we did exceed certain kinds of benchmarks. But frankly, if you're talking about open access and open democracy, any voice should be able to have a place at the table. That's the way that you should do things. And the Green Party really violated its own values. Now, when we talk about conflicts of interest, the campaign started with a co-chair of the party simultaneously serving as the campaign manager for Hawkins.
No, come on. This is unacceptable. I mean, this is...
And you know, I'll add to that she appeared at that A&M back in 2019, that I railed against the conflicts of interest and corruption. And her appearance there was paid for by the party because she was a co-chair. So she appeared at that meeting, subsidized by the party, at which she also simultaneously campaigned for Hawkins and did tabling for his campaign. Now, the campaign itself, when faced with that allegation from me, recently attempted to bat it back and deny that there was a conflict of interest, but then noted that they paid the money back. If it wasn't a problem, why did you have to pay the money back? It's just, well, it's also not the point, but it also does illustrate the point. You paid the money back because it was wrong. It was
Exactly. Yeah.
wrong. You got
They
caught,
know.
okay?
They
Now, the
know.
same co-chair, as if that wasn't bad enough, that same co-chair, Andrea Marita Cuellar, she also happened to be the co-chair of Colorado. So while Colorado is doing a primary, she's presiding over that primary. And that primary had irregularities that resulted in a complaint from local Greens in Colorado. It wasn't mounted by our campaign, but it was mounted by local Greens who had enough. It was one amongst a number of complaints. There were some other complaints that came from some of the delegates from our campaign in their name as Greens, not from our campaign specifically, because that's how you would have to mount that complaint internally in the party. And the complaints had to do with certain irregularities, like, for example, Texas. In Texas, Hawkins got less than half of the votes, but 77% of the delegates. In the young
What kind of math is that?
You know, I mean, these are things that are just glaringly basic, and outside of the party, people understand how ridiculous it is. And frankly, inside the party, they understand it too. They're just engaging in the Hawkins campaign is engaging in a massive gaslighting campaign. They've gaslit the entire party, and now they're trying to gaslit the entire left. So multiple complaints were made about this, and the party swatted them all down one after the other. And so if you had attended the convention, what you would have watched was a report from CredCom on those complaints, noting the dismissal of those complaints for various technicalities, and a vote without any discussion to accept the report and to move the heck on. No one got to discuss at the convention all of these irregularities, all the cheating, all of the processes that were involved in the overall rigging. No one got to discuss it, except the presidential candidates, who got 5 minutes each, and multiple such candidates, including myself, raised it. But no one got to step forward and debate or discuss the issue as a party at the convention. They swept it all under the rug. And so what you have is a pattern of abuse, a pattern of conflicts of interest, of abuse of process, of abuse of influence, and of shutting out other candidates. Nothing about what transpired in that primary can be described as democracy. And so that's a big part of why we're here, and we are moving forward. Because what that primary left people with was with absolutely no democratic choice to move forward with as a Green nominee and to support. And so what we are doing is offering people that choice that they can trust, because they cannot at present trust in the Green Party. I hope they change their tune. But frankly, you have a deeply entrenched leadership, and they need to be gotten rid of in order for that to happen.
This is very reminiscent of 2016 with the Hillary Clinton campaign colluding, no pun intended using that term, right? Working in tandem with the DNC leadership in order to rig the primary in her favor. And, it's quite disappointing, underwhelming, and that's putting it mildly, because a lot of people look to the Green Party as an alternative because they feel disenfranchised by the duopoly, by the two-party system, Democrats and Republicans screwing them over. And so I think if people actually understood what just happened, they wouldn't be too impressed anymore. Could you go into a little more detail about this blatant favoritism that was displayed by the leadership of the Green Party towards the Hawkins campaign?
Okay. So Illinois, for example, Illinois Spring Convention back in 2019. So I learned that they were going to have a special event fundraiser with Hawkins as the keynote speaker. So I contacted that state party's chair, and we had a back and forth. All this is documented by email. All of the receipts for this, by the way, have been posted to our official Twitter account. So for all the Hawkins stands that say there's no evidence of this, there's lots of evidence of it. So we were told specifically that I would not be able to speak. And so at that convention, that was a convention where I showed up and I spoke during lunch off the agenda, because that's what I was forced to do. In Connecticut actually gave him a fundraiser as well. And when called out by me, they pretended that they were going to offer an equal opportunity. But when asked to set a date, I'm free, I'm available, I'm flexible, let's set a date. They never happened. They never responded. I got to their convention. And when I got to their convention, same person still tried to stop me from speaking. A group of Greens that were at the convention just kind of moved me towards the podium, and it happened. In Missouri, I mentioned what happened with the Green New Deal panel. I just took a seat and just refused to move, and they went along with it because I guess they didn't want the unpleasantness of having to bolt me. And that's what took place. In Massachusetts, similar thing. Hawkins was a keynote speaker, and I was told that I could not speak on the agenda. Now, Massachusetts was an interesting circumstance because after the fact, see, the Green Party has a committee called the Presidential Campaign Support Committee.
Yes.
The title makes it sound like they actually support presidential campaigns. I don't think the PCSC could describe what they actually do because they really do nothing to support campaigns. What they really do is just to exist as a roadblock in order to support and defend the establishment candidate Hawkins. And that's what they've done consistently. So I bring them up in regards to Massachusetts because when their co-chairs, John Andrews, issued a report about the, in his mind, claim, but as I'm saying, reality, that I was banned from speaking in Massachusetts, he issued a report that he claimed was a subject of an investigation. It was a product of an investigation. And he determined in that report that no such blocking took place, that I was offered the opportunity to introduce myself, and I declined. Now, interestingly enough, that weekend, I visited 3 different state conventions. I drove all the way from Worcester, Ohio, to go to the convention in Massachusetts, in Maine, and in Connecticut. Who drives all of those hours to show up at a convention, and then when you're running to get votes, someone says, "Would you like to speak?" "Oh, no, thank you. That's all right. I'm good. I'm just going to sit here in a corner and just completely waste the time I spent driving to come and see you."
Exactly.
It makes no sense. And it was an investigation that did not even involve speaking to me. It was just an attempt to create a smoke screen. So in Massachusetts, I did have to, just as in Illinois, speak during lunch. And some notable people witnessed that speech off the agenda. Jill Stein and Jamu Baraka were there. The PCSC has existed as a roadblock. It has existed to support and defend the abuses of the Hawkins campaign. And at one juncture, they actually attempted to try and boot all the other candidates who were not recognized off of their candidates list on the website. And they were told rather markedly by me that that was unconscionable, that that was not acceptable, and that they were frankly making up rules as the game went along. They were just going to tell the other candidates, "Oh, we just decided to get rid of you off the list now. It wasn't a rule before, and it wasn't how we were going to operate before, but we're just going to take you off the list, off the website." I said, absolutely not. The PCSC has just been, it's just been a sham from the beginning, motivated particularly by John Andrews. Both him and his son are Hawkins supporters and have served as roadblocks in that regard in the course of the campaign. So if I were to give you a list of all the people in positions of party influence and power, whether on a state or a national level, who are openly members of the team and also occupying positions of influence over the primary, it would take too much time than it merits in just an answer to that one question. There are too many of them, far too many of them. And
I was actually going to ask you, like, about the conflicts of interest specifically. And when I started looking into it myself, I was like, oh my God, this is really a rabbit hole. I mean, it just doesn't end.
It is.
It's unbelievable. Allocating all these keynote events to Hawkins. And was this based on the premise that it's about the Green New Deal and therefore it's not in regards to his campaign? Is that how they camouflaged it, essentially?
That was a common excuse in that blocking that occurred early on. It was a common excuse. And what's interesting is as the race progressed, what they then attempted to do was as they realized they could get away with that less and less, they then tried to limit it to just recognized candidates. And frankly, the whole system of recognition of candidates on the part of the party. Look, if you came to the Green Party to escape the shenanigans with the DNC and the Democrats, this would look very familiar to you. You know, just like the shutting out of Tulsi Gabbard and some other candidates.
Exactly.
It's not acceptable. Democracy means letting those voices come to the forefront and speak and letting the voters decide, okay, maybe you don't like what they have to say. Maybe you don't like their background. Maybe you don't like them as an individual. It's not you to make that call. It's the voters.
Yeah, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard immediately came to mind just a few minutes ago when you mentioned that they started raising these requirements. I immediately thought of her because they did that for the debates earlier in, what was it, February or something like that, where they made sure that it was just going to be Bernie and Biden. And I mean, like you said, these tactics, we know them. And it's really, I mean, this is beyond disappointing. It's disgusting.
And this is something I have to point out. Every presidential campaign in this primary, except Hawkins, has said this primary is rigged. Every single one. It isn't just Dario Hunter. It isn't just two candidates. It's all of them. Now, we would have liked to have seen the party hold a genuinely democratic one, but it doesn't look like they are going to. And so this Green primary is a write-off. You know, I
Yeah.
am personally repudiating it. Our campaign is repudiating it. And we're moving forward with an independent candidacy because leftists need a choice that they can trust to build a fairer, greener America that isn't emerging from the ooze of a tainted, rigged primary.